Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to sunny Arizona. And it's a warm one. I shouldn't be wearing black outside, but it's still a little early. It hasn't broken 90 yet. I don't think Arizona quite understands the idea of spring. I know this past weekend was the first weekend of the spring, and that's great. But Arizona has no idea about that. They just go from like 50 to 100. It's just, I don't think there's a spring in between, and they didn't do much for fall either. So anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple things that our president has said, a couple things coming up, and particularly April 2nd. April 2nd, he put out a tweet, Trump put out a tweet that said it's Liberation Day. What does that mean? What is happening in our economy? There's lots going on in the world. We know this. There's lots of politics and wars and all this other stuff. I'm going to try and break it down to economics and your pocketbook because that's what matters to a lot of you the most. I'm glad to see that a lot of prices are coming down, which is great. Fuel prices are coming down, which impacts everything. Energy impacts every cost. But the financial system, what Doge has been finding, what's been uncovered, this and that, it all leads back to our money system is broken and has been broken for over 100 years. This is our third national bank, and I wanted to talk about, I'm going to go back to some history, but the tweet that Trump put out, or Truth, or whatever it was, that said April 2nd is Liberation Day. A lot of people were speculating, what could that mean? And I know that they've correlated the April 2nd date with the tariffs. And yes, the tariffs do go up then and more lock into place, but I don't think this is what this is about. Now, this started for me last week, and I try to catch a lot of Trump's appearances and his speeches because, what he does, that weave of his conversation and just talks about this and that and brings it all together. There's a lot of information inside of those statements, okay? When he says things that are kind of like you throw it off, yeah, whatever, it's really in those statements that matter. Let me give you one for example. Last week, Trump seemed to be doing not much of anything as far as he showed off, the Declaration of Independence in the Oval Office. I think it was Laura Ingraham that was there from Fox News. And he just said something, well, I don't know if you really care about this, but, notice the cherubs that I put up in here, and they're painted gold. And by the way, I think they were actually, it might be solid gold. I'm not sure which one it is. But he said something that was very interesting that leads to something else, okay? And he said that they've been trying for a long time to make gold paint without using actual gold. And it doesn't work. And he says they just, you can't make gold paint look like gold without using gold. So immediately that clicked in my mind because I try to pay attention to different things, back to Fort Knox, okay? So they're going to look inside of Fort Knox. That hasn't been dropped yet. It's going to happen. Things take time. Other priorities pop up and we move things around. Like, Congress is back this week, so who knows how that's going to go. But April 2nd is the week after, right? So week after, I think it's a week from Wednesday. But, leave your own thoughts of what my speculation or what your own thoughts are in the comments. But here's how I think this is all going to combine together. And I might tie it back to some of this stuff too. But right now, people are learning that our financial system is broken and has been broken. And we've talked about the inflation and how much it gets manipulated by the Fed. Everybody was talking about what was the Fed going to do last week? Are they going to cut? Are they going to, easing, tightening? What are they going to do? What I knew the Fed wasn't going to do anything. And I should have come up with a video and said that, but I think I said it on Twitter. It didn't surprise me at all because the Fed doesn't have control anymore. They tried cutting last winter and rates went up. That's not the way it's supposed to go. The Fed thinks they have control, but they don't. They know they're out of power now. They don't have anything to do with financial markets because there's been too much unearthed. There's been too much exposed out there. And what's happening now is that on April 2nd, Trump called it Liberation Day. What is so significant about that date is not the tariffs. I think it ties back to the Fed and Fort Knox. They're going to go and audit Fort Knox. They're going to notice that some of the gold is fake or it's missing or something, and they're going to point fingers at the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor does it have a reserve. It is the third national bank of our country, but it's the first without a charter. And now the first two had 20-year charters. That was from 1792 to 1812. 1792 is going to come back. I'll mention that in a moment. But from 1792 to 1812 was the first national bank. That ended, that wore out, that led to the War of 1812. 20 years later, they launched the second bank. Or not long after, they launched the second bank in the 1830s. Andrew Jackson ended that. And basically, England has been fighting, all wars are bankers' wars. England has been trying to get back the colonies, get back to the U.S., get back the banking sector forever, and there's many that speculate that they did get involved in that in the Federal Reserve or prior, the Act of 1871, funding the Civil War. Regardless, London has their tentacles, they have their grips, they have their claws into the financial system of the United States. The IRS is also not federal either. That's a private entity, and many speculate that the funds that go from the IRS, that go back to the Federal Reserve, go back to London. Because London is the global financial center of the planet. That's why they have an obelisk there. There's the Vatican for religion, there's Washington, D.C. for politics, and there's London for financial systems. So I know London's been mentioned recently. There's the questions about London's involvement in some conflicts recently. Also, with Trump talking that he's going to bring over some of the, I think King Charles might be coming over, talking about becoming a part of the Commonwealth again. That's not going to happen. That's just spotlighting it. So Trump likes to highlight things and gets thinking about certain topics. So we're going to be thinking about fake gold. We're going to be thinking about London and what's going to happen on April 2nd, in my opinion. Please, this is just one guy on the internet speculating, okay? My thoughts are, 227 years ago on April 2nd was the Coinage Act of 1792. What is that? What did that mean? That was when the U.S. declared what a dollar was going to equal. This is their currency. They're going to mint coins. Here's going to get who gets to mint coins, how much of a coin or how much of the object goes into a coin to make it a dollar, a $10 piece, and so on. And they specified the American eagle. There was a $10 eagle. There was a $5 eagle. There's a dollar. The eagles were in gold. The dollars were in silver. And certain amounts of silver and certain purities and so on. But that was the definition of the constitutional dollar, the Coinage Act of 1792. Do not think that Trump doesn't understand this or know this, because he's a constitutionalist. He has always talked about preserving the dollar, but he's never said constitutional dollar or the Federal Reserve dollar. There is a huge difference between the two, much like there's two different political parties, there's two different people. There's white hats and black hats. There's all kinds of people looking different ways. I dropped my notes, and I got them back. Okay, it is a little breezy. So we talked about gold and silver. We talked about Liberation Day, which is the 227th anniversary of the Coinage Act. So what am I thinking? I'm thinking we're going to highlight the Federal Reserve. We're going to highlight Fort Knox. We're going to highlight gold and silver. And we're going to go back to a constitutional dollar, because this Federal Reserve note, with its artificial inflation and its taxation, and it's all theft, okay? They are stealing from you. 2% inflation is 2% theft, because after after the Civil War, we were in a deflationary market. There was no Federal Reserve. There was no national bank. And through the Industrial Revolution, things were getting cheaper. People were living great, and they lived great again after World War II, because we had things domestically. We had domestic production. We had the gold. We had labor. You could have a nice nuclear family. One guy goes to work 40 hours a week, and the wife can stay home. The kids can get taken care of. They go to school. It all works. That all went to hell about 50 years ago, when they started pushing two people to go to work, and credit cards, and getting in debt, and more and more and more in debt. That debt is going to be nullified, because it's going to be proven to be fraudulent, and fraud vitiates everything, as proven out by the Supreme Court, and has been recently uncovered by the Doge team. All this different fraud. Now, all this spending was fake. We see the government spending was propping up other sectors like housing, real estate, travel, hotels. All those industries are hurting now because the government dollars aren't there to spend. So this is just my thought. I'm looking forward to reading your comments below, but I think we're going to go back to real hard money, and it's going to be mentioned on April 2nd in some way, shape, or form. It might be just an anecdote, might just put it out there, but the Coinage Act of 1792 is going to come out, and people are going to realize that this dollar, the Federal Reserve note, that piece of green paper, is garbage, and you want hard money, gold, silver, Bitcoin, assets, real things that have limited supply, are hard to pull out of the earth, and they're like in gold and silver, they're tangible. But we've already set up Bitcoin to be a strategic reserve. We got the gold in Fort Knox. We're going to audit. We got silver that's getting pressure as well. London is not being able to physically deliver. It's all coming to a head, people, and people are starting to learn that it's not just the government, it's also the money. The money is broken. We need to fix it. We need to go back to where we came from over 200 years ago and go back to hard currencies, silver and gold, which are tangible assets, which are real assets. Can't be, it's very, very hard to fake, or what is the C word? It's not confiscate. Leave in the comments below. But it's hard to make fakes. Counterfeit. Thank you. All right, my brain's not working. I'm going to end it right there. What are your thoughts? You think we're going back to hard money? You think the Coinage Act of 1792 is going to be mentioned? We've already had, we've heard the Constitution, we heard the Bill of Rights, we've heard the Declaration of Independence. That was just put up on the wall in the Oval Office. We're going back to the 1700s to go back to what the founders really intended for this country, to get back to where we came from and have a solid country again. So those are my thoughts. Looking forward to reading all yours. I'll take care, and I'll see you next video. Take care. Bye.